now that you've all been booted from that hall because you don't have a perspective that matches that of the administrators and the idiot protesters who think it's okay to post Black Lives Matter sign, that it's evil and terrible to post Unborn Lives Matter sign? Do you feel equal? Do you feel better? No, I didn't think so. But see, it only applies to one side. Everybody has to feel equal, and the left gets to decide whose feelings actually matter. And so they have trigger warnings, right? We have to have trigger warnings to ensure that everybody is able to survive the catastrophic horror of hearing Christina Hoff Sommers talk. Right? Their life might be over. They might be shaking for days. It's just like Nam. Right? We have to warn people about microaggressions. Everybody has to be very careful of microaggressions because you wouldn't want to be microaggressed. And it's not even that I intend to offend you, it's that if you are offended subjectively, then I have microaggressed you. And that, by the way, allows you to do things like call out the cops, right? If I microaggress you, then you are allowed to do violent things in response. The very language of microaggressions suggested I have done something aggressive to you, and now you can do something aggressive to me, right? You can threaten to arrest me if I set foot on your campus. And my favorite story about this, and I'll tell it quickly for purposes of time, but this has bled up all the way into the upper echelons of the left. One example, how many of you ever watched a CNN headline news? Show of hands. Okay, that is the entire viewership of CNN headline news. No one has ever seen CNN headline news. So right about the time that Caitlyn Jenner was becoming, of course, our great national saint, ESPN decided that it was important to honor Caitlyn Jenner with the Hero of the Year award. And so CNN Headline News decided, okay, we want to have somebody on to discuss this who's from the right. So they actually looked up conservative in the white pages. I'm the only one in a 30-mile radius of CNN studios in LA, and so they called me. And my perspective on transgenderism, by the way, is that transgenderism is a tragic and horrible mental disorder, and that treating it as anything less than that, treating it as though men can magically become women and women can magically become men, that's mythical crap that is designed to make a small segment of people feel better, but doesn't actually help the people who are suffering, and certainly does nothing for the sanity of the society at large that's being told to change their definitions of basic biology based on subjective feeling. Right? That's my perspective on transgenderism. So anyway, they called me in to discuss this. And I get in there, and the producer walks up to me, and he says, you know, Mr. Shapiro, we don't have any ratings on this network. And I said, yes, I'm well aware. And he said, well, you know, tonight we want to do something a little bit different, and by the way, I was a producer with Jerry Springer. And at that point, I should have said, okay, I need to leave, but being the intrepid sort, I said, no, we'll go ahead anyway. They put me on the stage, and on the stage, it's me and 1, 2, 3 other people next to me, and then I think there's 3 other people on the stage, including Dr. Drew. All of them have left. So it was me against 6 leftists, which made it almost fair for them. So we start the debate on Caitlyn Jenner. And the only debate that's happening is Caitlyn Jenner a hero or the greatest hero? Should Caitlyn Jenner be given a spot in Arlington National Cemetery or actually canonized? Should Caitlyn Jenner be granted the papal supremacy, or should Caitlyn Jenner actually be given a chariot of fire to ascend to heaven? Right? These were the only questions that were being. So finally they come to me and they say, what do you think? And I express to you what I think. I said, I don't see what's heroic about this. This is tragic to me. It's somebody expressing his mental illness on a public stage, and the entire country acting as though this is something wonderful, and it isn't. And I neglected to mention, the person sitting next to me was a transgender person, and his name was Zoe Turb. So this is formerly Bob Turb. And Zoe turns to me, and Zoe says, you don't know anything about biology, little boy, in a voice at least an octave lower than mine. And I said, well, I know enough about Caitlyn Jenner's biology to know that every single cell of Caitlyn Jenner's body has a Y chromosome in it, except, ironically, for the exception of some of his sperm cells. And again, Zoe keeps pushing. No, you don't know anything about biology. You don't know anything about genetics, little boy. You don't know anything about genetics. And finally, after a minute and a half of this, I turn and I say, well, what are your genetics, sir? And it was the sir that set him off. On national TV, he reaches over and grabs me by the back of the neck. Really, it's on national TV, live. He grabs me by the back of the neck and he says, if you don't cut that out, I'll send you home in an ambulance. And honest to God, the first thought that went through my mind was, you don't even go home in an ambulance. But what I actually said was, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political conversation. But everybody else on the panel, and this is the part that matters, everybody else on the panel didn't turn on Zoe for grabbing me by the back of the neck and threatening me on national TV, which is battery and assault, actually, by the technical legal definition. That is, instead, they said, how dare you say anything offensive? How could you have offended Zoe that way? That is just terrible. That is just terrible. And that's the mentality of the left. When they say they want equality of feelings can only be enforced at the point of gun or through the use of force. And by the way, the threats of force didn't stop there. As Zoe was hulking off the set, Zoe turns to me and says, "I'll see you in the parking lot." It's more like, "I'll see you in the parking lot." And I said, "No, you won't." And security actually ushered me out. I have a lot of experience with security in the last couple of years. And then later, the next day, Zoe threatened me on Twitter to curb stomp me on Twitter. All of which, personally, I thought was deeply unladylike behavior. So, once you've gotten rid of the trigger warnings and the microaggressions, then finally you have your pathetic safe spaces for all of these snowflakes who can't deal with the real world and are convinced that the real world is going to conform to your standards of what it ought to be, that the real world is constructed just for you. Let me tell you a secret. In the real world, no one pays you to believe in the power of your dreams. In the real world, nobody cares about your internal feelings. In the real world, all people care about is whether you do good things or bad things. But the safe spaces you construct suggest that you are allowed to ban people who think differently than you in order to achieve a better outcome for yourself. It is the essence of fascism. And all this, of course, makes kids nuts. It makes kids nuts. It makes administrators nuts, clearly. Right? You're being made insane. If you're taught that you're a victim, that you're always a victim, or alternatively, that you're a victimizer, if you're taught that over and over and over again until it never stops, eventually you're going to go out and realize that you get benefit for being a victim. The more you claim victimhood, the better off you are. And this is what the left has done. They've created an entire society of the victim mentality where they say your own work, your own labor, the things you do, they make no difference in life. All that matters is you claim you're a victim and we give you extra credit. You get special points in heaven and on earth for being a victim. And if you act aggressively because you're a victim, we'll excuse that too. This is pretty dangerous stuff. There's a reason that a Pew poll in 2015 found that 40% of millennials, people our age, I'm still part of your generation, believe the government should be able to prevent people from making statements that are offensive to minority groups. That's the repeal of the First Amendment. And we're watching it happen in real time. So here's the bottom line. Social justice, white privilege, safe spaces. These concepts are designed to destroy American ideology. They're designed to destroy American philosophy. America is based on the foundational principle that you and you alone are responsible for your actions, and that you get to say whatever you want so long as you're not physically harming anyone else. That is what America is based on, and the left is ripping away at those foundational principles. The left is saying, you're not responsible for your actions, everybody else is. And they're saying, you don't get to say what you want if it offends somebody else of the left. This is how a democracy, this is how a republic slides slowly into fascism with a smiley face. Right? It doesn't come with the jackboots. It comes first with the flowers and the smiley face and the safety pins. Right? That's where they come from. And people marching in the streets about the results of a just decided election. How about this? How about go out and vote? That might have helped. If you didn't like the outcome, you could have gone out and voted. There's just a story that these riots that are happening in Portland, literally half of the people rioting did not vote in this election. Okay, these are people who are not interested in upholding the American system. They're not interested in the Constitution. They're not interested in the Declaration. They're not interested in what America is and historically has been. But you are. All of you are. Yeah. Whether you're left or right in this room, you are. Because you actually want to hear different ideas. You actually care about hearing different ideas. You actually care about a free country where people can disagree with you without being threatened with arrest, where people can actually say things that you don't like without them being threatened with physical harm. We all have to stand together now, because that group is getting smaller and smaller. If we stand together, we cannot be defeated, because in the end, freedom will triumph over tyranny. But we have to understand the threat that is, and the threat is tyranny. And if that threat didn't materialize right before your eyes tonight, I don't know what would. We have to fight it every step of the way. We have to fight against the politically correct tyrants who would destroy the foundations of the republic. And I think all of us are part of a battle now. All of us are part of that army. All of us are part of that group. You've been deputized. You're all part of it. You all have cell phones. You're all capable of this. Be part of the fight. Be part of the army. Thanks so much for coming, guys.
Just a little deeper, and I actually am a person who speaks very fast. I was speaking rather slowly in the hall because I was waiting for a phone call. And I kept seeing these phone calls, but anyway, it all worked out. Here we are. This theory, intersectionality. I'm sorry if you're unfamiliar with it. I'm sorry to familiarize you with it because it's it's so full of fallacies and conceptual confusion, but it originated in the 1970s and the 1980s, and as I was saying before I was interrupted by the phone call, pathologies like racism, sexism, classism, ageism, ableism, these are not separate systems. They connect, they overlap, they create complex arrangements of advantages and burdens. So a white woman is penalized for her gender, privileged by her race. A black man could suffer from his race, but he garners advantage from his gender. A black woman could be in double jeopardy and suffer disadvantage for both race and gender. Now, so far, so good. This theory has a surface plausibility. And if you were simply a social worker or even an activist, you were trying to decide on a course of action, it's quite reasonable to consider people's complex identities and to be attentive to those who might be forgotten. This theory, as it is practiced on the campus, is something quite different. Intersectional theory has a view of the West, particularly the United States,